Well, that was a tough watch. Hopefully this one will be a little bit better. Man United are currently running trials for their starting 11 for the second half of the season. We're seeing different lineups every single game, and it's super, super interesting. And in this video, I want to talk about the players that have struggled. What is the biggest problem for Amorim in terms of the setup? What was the problem today or tonight in the game against Arsenal in terms of them being able to kind of affect it properly? And then I want to touch on Arsenal at the end of it, because there's a nuanced conversation that I'd like to have with you, and that's the whole point of more James Allcott. The fact that I can talk about myself in the third person, firstly. But secondly, the opportunity to just put forward some thoughts and then us have a conversation in the comments. So please do get involved. Please do subscribe. I think we might be at 5k now. It'd be great to get to 10k as soon as possible. And yeah, just keep an eye on this, because I'm going to be able to do free-flowing content on here. So these are the two setups for the game. We had our general Arsenal team. And actually, what I will start with, is he the best goalkeeper in the world right now? Just a thought. I think he might be. He is so good right now. Great on the ball, got a little swagger with the way that he's passing the ball, making the right decisions, helping the team out, sweeping up, making saves when he's got to make saves, coming for crosses, which was probably the first thing I should have said, but it's the last thing. He is so good for them right now. The back four, you then had yourself a bit of Timber, a bit of Saliba, a bit of Kivior, a bit of Zinchenko. Zinchenko started here, but they kind of wiggled inside. Then you use your midfield three of Partey, Rice, and Odegaard, and your two wide guys and Havertz. And out of possession, I thought what I will say is they're just a different animal, really, when Odegaard is in the team from a pressing point of view. When we're talking about, Arsenal being sort of the best team in the world, players being the best player in their position, I've got to say, are Arsenal the best team out of possession? Especially when they've got this boy, Odegaard, in the team. Because, as I say, I did a video on my main channel talking about how he is so important to this team with the ball, but crucially without, because he just sets the tempo in terms of getting out at the opposition. But we got what we normally get. Rice, I thought, was really good. Saka was doing Saka things, as he always does, making life difficult. Although Malacia, I thought, stuck to task well. As I say, Zinchenko kind of stepped him here, and they went to a back three at times, and that's getting a bit out of hand, so let's calm that down. But overall, Arsenal were just being Arsenal, and scoring from two set pieces. And I'm going to show you some stats at the end of this video that, I've got a question for you, so stick around. Let's talk about Man United, because, as I say, they are currently holding trials. The thing that I thought was difficult for them was this. I saw this floating about. This is their passing network. And I think it's quite interesting here, because the inability to get up the pitch, the inability to work through the centre of the pitch, I think are two massive, massive problems. And then, in terms of being able to get touches in the box, it's kind of non-existent. I saw that I think they had 6 touches in the penalty box. And so you can see here the struggles there, right? And when we go to the average positions, it kind of puts forward the exact same notion that they were struggling. They really, really were struggling to move the ball through against a really, really good team. It's a bit fun, isn't it? There we go. And as you can see on that left-hand side, he had Garnacho. And that left-hand side is just that little bit further up. Now, you've got Malacia in the team. You've got Delot, who, to be fair to him, had to pop over to the other side of the pitch. But he wasn't really getting himself up the pitch. And as I say, they weren't able to work through. This is the thing that I think is a problem. As we go through this team, the biggest problem I think that Amorim has is that I think there's a lot of giving the benefit of the doubt right now. But at some point, it will get to a point where that will turn into frustration. And the one thing that felt pretty glaring, we'll go from back to front, actually. I thought Onana did really well, or as well as he could do. The corner situation with Arsenal, we'll talk about. But Onana overall is having a really good season, so you don't have to worry about him. I think it was interesting. His passing range was a little bit different at times. Sometimes actually went long a little bit more than we have seen the last few games. But playing the last few games, Ipswich and Everton is a very, very different animal. The back line, I thought, was interesting. Maguire, I thought the pings were there. The pings were there. But there will be a theme here that you'll see when we're going through this squad and this team. There's only a few players that kind of have everything for Man United in terms of the profiles that Amorim wants. And most of them are missing something quite heavily. Let's put Zinchenko back over here. Swap him around. Because Maguire I thought did okay. Obviously came off. De Ligt playing on that right-hand side looked pretty comfortable as well. And Arsenal sort of going forward were sort of okay. They just sort of gently move up, don't they? And gently sort of suffocate the opposition with the physicality and the passing patterns that they have. There was a moment, actually, when Saliba sort of played a little burst, but you can see how well coached these guys are, almost to the point of, like, disappointing efficiency. In the fact that Saliba sort of got to here and he thought, and then he went, oh, I might, no, I'm going to go back. I thought that, and that is, for the purists, that's a bit of a shame, but in terms of having him back, that's the smart move, right? The thing that Man United are really going to struggle with, I think, is playing Mount and Fernandes together. Let's talk about Fernandes. Now, I did a video after the Everton game, and there were some really, really lovely pairings that we saw in the game. Xerxes and Rashford at times, Casemiro being an option for Bruno Fernandes in that midfield too. And Bruno Fernandes, I actually really like him in midfield. He's got that energy to burst around the pitch. Yes, he can still see a pass. And I think in the team that we saw in this game here, let's take all this off because it's madness, isn't it? The team that we saw here in terms of him in midfield, I thought what was nice was his ability to drop deep into this area here and pick up the ball. But it came at a price. And I thought Garnacho, and as I say, the theme with a lot of these players is Maguire, the pings were there, but if you really want to be sort of forward-thinking with what you're doing, has he got the physicality to do it to the level that he wants? De Ligt, I think, is really, really useful. Mazraoui, can we speak about Mazraoui for a second? Mazraoui has played in so many positions and really well in most. There was one moment we gave the ball away in a silly area, but aside from that, he's the player of the season for Man United, in my opinion. I can't kind of keep my eyes off him at times. I can't believe that I forgot how good he was. He's really, really good. And let's remember, he's played left-sided centre-back in a 3, right-sided centre-back in a 3. He's played right-back. He's played left-back. He's played attacking midfield. And he, at some point, will play right wing-back and inevitably will play left wing-back as well. And he'll be absolutely competent in all of those. Ugarte, again, the problem we've got here is that Fernandes is going to drop deep. And this is the biggest point I can make today in this video, is that some of the players were a little bit higher up when we looked at those average positions. Let me just show it for a second, just so you can get it in your mind again. So here you have it. A few more players are up on that side, right? And here you can see the passing network, again, focusing down that left-hand side. And this, to me, screams Mason Mount and Bruno Fernandes can't play in the same team. Maybe I'm wrong. And again, we're in trial season, so maybe things will be different in time. But what I see is Fernandes, when he drops deep to pick the ball, and again, I have no problem with this pairing of Ugarte and Fernandes. I actually kind of like it. But the problem you're going to have is when he drops deep, he's going to get his head up and he's going to look for a pass. And that's where Højlund, who I think needs to be quicker in terms of his anticipation, maybe that will come with time and chemistry and understanding that Bruno Fernandes is there. Because there's very few players, really, in the midfield too, that are going to think pass first. And Bruno Fernandes is one of those players who will happily play that pass, actually kind of likes that ping. You know, that guy that you've got in your team who just kind of wants to spray the ball about a little bit. But Bruno Fernandes is that kind of player. He'll dribble with it if he has to, but he's not really bothered about that. He'd rather play those little passes into different players. And, you know, another one maybe to Garnacho as well, who was one of the highest players up the pitch. And Højlund looking to spin. Nearly got Saliba at one point, but Saliba just way too good. But Mason Mount, especially with, you know, Partey and Rice, Zinchenko inverting at times as well, is going to make life a little bit difficult, unable to get higher up the pitch. But as you saw from that passing network, this pass is never on. Now, if Rashford is playing, and this is something that we actually saw, and it worked quite well. See if I can find Rashford somewhere. With Rashford, you've got a player there that can get involved and running behind. I can't seem to find him. Here he is. If you've got this player here, there's an option for Bruno Fernandes, because Bruno Fernandes can play that pass. And the Xerxes pairing, that worked because he could come short here and then they could play again, get it laid off, and then you're actually maybe bringing the defence a little bit closer, and then you're allowing Rashford to spin into those areas as well, which I thought Rashford enjoyed. But Mason Mount, in this position here, he'll make that run, but he doesn't really want to. What he really wants is someone to give him the ball to kind of feet, be it punching it through, which I just don't think Fernandes looks for that pass because he's looking for Højlund. Or he'll sort of recycle it round, might get it to Ugarte, and I think another problem is Ugarte being able to play that pass into Mount quickly. There was a moment when De Ligt even had the ball up here, and Mount was going, come on, like move up the pitch, and he didn't. And so Mount is going to suffer on this right-hand side if Fernandes is in the team, especially playing in a two. I just don't see how he's ever really going to see the ball. And the other problem that you're going to have with this Man United team is Diallo, because Diallo, if you bring him on, it's one where, again, if we're thinking about Rashford, and we spoke about this in the other video, so go check that one out. If you play the ball, if Diallo wants to kind of step into these places, Rashford will make that run. But I think Mount will stand still a bit more. He hasn't got that burst, the same kind of burst. So when Diallo starts wide and comes in here with the ball, okay, he might make that run, but is he really ever going to be as effective, as Rashford would be in that scenario? What he really wants is an out-and-out winger to sort of run beyond him. So, again, let's take Garnacho out this time. Actually, yeah. Let's put and imagine Diallo's right, wants to stay wide. If he stays wide, and if that winger sort of comes in and plays for them, maybe even Mazraoui, it's one where instead they're going to play the ball into him in those half spaces. He can get it, he can turn, he could maybe play in Højlund, or he can bounce back that pass to Diallo, and maybe Zinchenko gets taken away by him, or he's able to drive with the ball himself. Mason Mount needs to be able to get the ball, though. So one thing that will facilitate all of this is having the wing-backs that you want, that actually the opposition are a little bit concerned with. The other thing is Ugarte needs to be better on the ball, to play the ball straight. Third thing for me is that they've got to be careful in terms of that over-reliance of Fernandes. Or ultimately, just let Mason Mount go. Because I think as much as you want him to work, and he could work in the system, that for me feels like a problem. Malacia gave everything. And I think, it's just good to see him back on the football pitch after everything he's gone through. But there's a lot of changes that kind of need to be happening. And the sort of alchemy of these players is what needs to be found. And there's a lot of problems here because, Mason Mount is not Fernandes. You're always going to play Fernandes. They kind of want the same ball at times. So he hasn't got that out-and-out burst of pace. Højlund needs to be smarter. Rashford feels like he needs a partner with him. Xerxes is a funny one because, yes, he's got the touch at times. At times, there was one horrible pass. But he's also, he is a little bit immobile. So, is he really sort of helping out the team, or is it only going to work when you've got Mason Mount out of the team, Rashford in the team, and you play it that way? So many question marks for this team. So many players that you're not totally sure, and so many players that even say someone like Diallo, is he going to get the right partner in here? And so in terms of the chopping and changing, it kind of needs to be done right now to really, really understand who are your pairings. Because when you circle different players, it's going to need to work everywhere. 1, 2, 3. We've got enough. There's one more. Let's chuck one in there. Come on, let's get Mount back in there. Maybe could you put Fernandes on this side? Possibly. Are you going to then just have the same problem? Yeah. So in terms of like, is that a good pairing? Or that feels like a better pairing? That you understand the pairing. That you understand the pairing. So many question marks. Final thing I want to talk about is Arsenal. And I want to talk about the corners. One question, as I say, this is a nuanced discussion, okay? So don't get angry at me, okay? These are all really good. They don't sound sexy, but like being efficient, being brilliant off the ball, knowing how your team sets up, knowing how your team plays, and knowing how your team scores goals is incredible. And the amount of goals that you're scoring from dead balls is absolutely ridiculous. And it's crushing. It's crushing for the opposition. You see them panicking. Check this out. So first of all, goals from actually let me go here because this was funny. I thought is the shots that Arsenal had, just like 2 goals from a yard out, which made me sort of head over to FB Ref and kind of think, oh, that's interesting. So in terms of the goals shot distance, they are top of the league in terms of being really, really close to the goal. Just 0.2 yards further away than anyone else. But what's really interesting is a couple of things here. So this one is, what is this? Crosses? What's that one called? It's just crosses, I think. I think that's just crosses, basically. Crossed passes, more than anyone else. And then corner kicks I thought was interesting. Now, what I thought was really interesting is that the teams that sort of go both ways, shall we say, Wolves, Man United a little bit, West Ham, Fulham, Nottingham Forest, are all teams that have not scored that many corners. And the amount of in from Arsenal, it's always an in-swinger. Always, 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 always an in-swinger. I think that's really, really interesting. And then in terms of goals scored, 7 from dead passes. Is this papering over the cracks of the overall play, which I'm not sure that's correct, or is this the weapon, the cheat code that is going to get Arsenal back into this title race? I don't know. Because I think aside from that, you've got moments from Odegaard, you've got the odd moment from Saka, you've got the suffocation of the opposition. And it's not, it really, I got to be honest, it's not the most enjoyable to watch. Probably because we just know those passing patterns so much. But the bottom line is the amount of goals that come from this Arsenal team from an in-swinging corner is incredible. And I'll leave you with this question. I'll put it on Twitter. Some people won't like this. It's so choreographed and they're so dominant, Arsenal, in what they're doing from the corners. And what you're seeing is the blocking. It's becoming what is actually quite kind of nuanced in, what looks like a flock of bees in a penalty area is now so systematic and so kind of similar. We know they're going to go all to the back post. We know it's going to be an in-swinging cross. We know there's going to be blockers. Then we know there's going to be someone that gets in the way of the goalkeeper. Will the opposition teams start playing up to that? Because I think if you think of Timber and the push today, it was just on the line of being too blatant, but at the same time, Højlund was a bit maybe too honest with it. The other side of it is VAR going to get used more and more. I really wouldn't be surprised if you saw a Arsenal goal from a corner where they score from a yard out, disallowed for something very, very subjective, but it would be one of those ones where, like, that player that sort of made foul after foul, but they're all like really niggly fouls. If this will be that, because you're seeing the same thing, because people are watching these goals, and would that goal cost them at some point? I think just be ready for it, Arsenal fans, because I feel like that is coming, because that push from Timber, if you're a goalkeeper, it's maybe worth sort of coming out and like doing a bit of the dive to get yourself a foul maybe at times, because they just seem so dominant. And Man United are just, and every team are just like, after about 6 or 7, they are really, really struggling with it. It's fascinating stuff. Let me know how you feel about it with your Man United squad. What's your best 11? And who have you been impressed with so far? And who do you want to see more of next? And Arsenal, how you feeling about the set piece situation? It's a good one, but what's the truth?